At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio.
Let's ride! Go!
Welcome in. After further review here on a Tuesday, presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Musso in for Moscona. Scone's on his final vacation of the year, and boy, did he pick a good day to hit that up. Jordan Kitchens, Paul O'Neill along for the ride, and we sure are glad that you are. We have an absolute jam-packed show that got even more jam-packed about an hour or so ago. Tyrann Mathieu has retired from the NFL and from the New Orleans Saints. You know, we have plenty of thoughts on that. LSU, they're getting ever so closer to training camp, and want to talk a little bit about the Tigers and their upcoming season. Shots flying at the SEC from Big Ten Media Days and ACC Media Days. Have thoughts on all of that. Blake Baker was on OTB this morning. There's a ton to get to, but let us go ahead and begin as we do every single day.
It's time to pop the top on another edition of AFR with Bud Light. Drink easy.
No surprise where we will begin. Tyrann Mathieu has called it a career. 12 seasons in the NFL. Obviously, his time at LSU, the last 3 of those 12 seasons coming with the New Orleans Saints, a Super Bowl champion, a 3-time All-Pro, a 3-time Pro Bowler. What a career for Tyrann Mathieu. Wow. I was caught very off guard by this news today. I think we all knew Tyrann Mathieu was going to retire a Saint. Tyrann Mathieu had made that abundantly clear that that's what he wanted to do, especially when he signed that last extension that was going to carry him through the 2025 season. And it, by all accounts, like, okay, this was going to be kind of the last ride, right? It wasn't stated, but it was kind of just understood. Tyrann was 32 years old a season ago. There wasn't much left there. He was expected to be one of your starting safeties alongside Justin Reed, a guy he had a lot of familiarity with, and you were going to go forth into 2025 with that as your defensive backfield and feel pretty good about it if you're the New Orleans Saints. And on the day they report to training camp, this news comes down. Really, minutes or so before Mickey Loomis and Kellen Moore both took to the podium to officially kind of open Saints training camp. And Mickey Loomis, when he met with the media, had this to say right off the top about Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah, we had a little advance notice on that, so it wasn't like we were surprised today. I'm a little surprised, but we had some advance notice, and just have so much respect for Tyrann and what he's accomplished. And I mean, he's a legendary Louisiana player, legendary NFL player. Really appreciate his time with us. He was fantastic, and I don't have enough good things to say about him. I have a lot of good things to say about him.
I think we all do. Let's put the Saints portion of this aside just for a minute. And let's talk about Tyrann Mathieu, the player, the person, and his career. Because I think Mickey Loomis said it best. He's a legend. Like, he is a legendary Louisiana football player. He played at a high level at each level of football in Louisiana, whether it was high school at St. Aug, as you know, under-recruited coming out of St. Aug, but ends up at LSU and bursts onto the scene as a freshman in 2010. And really, look, don't get me wrong, LSU was extremely good in 2010 and 2011. But Tyrann Mathieu was as much of a part as thrusting LSU into the national spotlight in those seasons as anything. The Honey Badger. Like, there are certain plays you think of when you think of LSU, of Tyrann Mathieu's LSU career. And it wasn't just us here in Louisiana. It was nationally. Everyone tuned into every LSU football game over those 2 years, specifically 2011, to see what extraordinary play Tyrann Mathieu was going to make, because he made an extraordinary play every damn game. He fundamentally changed games for LSU. You can think of the punt return against Arkansas, the 92-yarder. That pulled LSU even. They overcame a 14-0 deficit, and they never looked back in that game. The SEC championship game a week later, same deal. LSU's down in that game by double digits. The defense is holding a minute, and it's Tyrann Mathieu's punt return against Georgia that really got LSU off and running in that game from a scoring standpoint. The sack fumble touchdown against Kentucky. I always go back to those Cotton Bowl in the end of the 2010 season, the diving interception. Tyrann Mathieu won the Bednarik Award for the nation's best defender. He was a Heisman Trophy finalist. You could not talk LSU football without talking about the Honey Badger and his journey up to that point. But it was at LSU where his journey gets even more complicated, but even that much more important and inspiring and interesting. We all know the off-the-field issues for Tyrann Mathieu. He's been extremely open and honest about those ever since being dismissed from the team at LSU, and the very difficult decision that Les Miles had to make to dismiss Tyrann Mathieu before his junior season when LSU was still one of the perennial contenders for a national title going into 2012. But it was what Tyrann Mathieu did after that happened, where he turned his life around, got the right people in his life, all things that he's talked about. Takes that year off out of football to really kind of do that, ends up a third-round draft pick of the Cardinals. Spends time with the Texans for a season, then goes to Kansas City, where he becomes Super Bowl champion. And returns to New Orleans, where it all began, and was a very productive player. Tyrann Mathieu, in his 3 seasons with the New Orleans Saints, logged over 220 tackles, all after 30 years old, 10 interceptions. He never lost that part of his game, that Honey Badger part of his game. He never lost it. In Tyrann Mathieu's his first season in 2022 with the Saints, that was his most productive year from a tackle standpoint. 91 tackles that year, most of his career. Did the production wane a little bit down the stretch? Sure. But for the most part, or not for the most part, he was healthy in New Orleans. He played 17 games each of his 3 years. And while the Saints weren't a great team in any of those years, and man, that's something that definitely ate at Tyrann. You could hear it just whenever he would speak to the media, and really not just the media, in any setting, about really wanting to win in New Orleans. He gave you something to just root for no matter what every Sunday, because that's your guy. It's the hometown kid playing for the hometown team and having his most productive year doing so. He is a Louisiana football legend and forever will be. You know, a lot of people might look at Tyrann Mathieu's career in the NFL and go, oh, it was good. Like, it was solid. Longevity, won a Super Bowl, the All-Pros, the Pro Bowl is great. Everyone here is going to look at Tyrann Mathieu's career in the NFL and revere it, as you should, because it's the culmination of what was a very inspiring journey that Tyrann Mathieu went on. And we all saw it each step of the way because he was here for the ups, for the downs, and then for the culmination. And it should be revered. He's one of the greatest football players to ever come out of the state of Louisiana. He will be a Saints, up in the Saints Hall of Fame, I do believe, one day. Obviously, that's going to happen for LSU. Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, probably too. this is where Tyrann Mathieu belongs. And it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome that his career was able to end back where it all started. Not a lot of guys get that opportunity. Tyrann Mathieu did. And along the way, he supplied us with countless memories. One of the easiest guys ever to root for. And I'll tell you this, as much of a joy as it was watching Tyrann Mathieu do the extraordinary things on the football field, it was a greater and bigger joy to root for that guy every step of the way because he makes it so easy. Hats off. A major congratulations. Well-deserved retirement for the Honey Badger. And he's not going anywhere. That's a guy that's going to continue to be around at LSU. I mean, he already has. He's already donated back to the program. All of those things. You know you'll see him there. You know you'll see him around the Saints. You know, people will remember him mainly, probably really for the run in Kansas City because he was able to win the Super Bowl, but also as a Cardinal. Everyone here is going to really remember his time with New Orleans because, again, back where it all began. Congratulations to Tyrann Mathieu, man. A great career, 12 years in the league, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. Just magnificent. Best of luck with what's next for him. Obviously, we have to talk about what is next for the New Orleans Saints because that does matter. They open training camp tomorrow, and now they are down a safety, and that's significant. Have some names for you to potentially look out for. We'll let you hear a little bit more from Mickey Loomis about Tyrann Mathieu and those things as we go forward. But wanted to spend that first segment really just reflecting on Tyrann and the career he had specifically in this state at 3 different levels. And it was legendary. So congrats to Tyrann Mathieu on a well-deserved retirement after 12 years in the NFL. All right, we're going to grab a break. Come back on the other side. We will look at what's next for the New Orleans Saints. Stay here. It's AFR.
Brought to you by
After
Action
further
Industries,
review.
proud partner of LSU Athletics, actionindinc.com. That's where you find them online. You can find them on LinkedIn as well. And one of the things that I tell you often about Action Industries that I really respect the most is Action Industries, they know who they are as a business. They've been around since 1982. So in 42 years, they've really developed a reputation among the petrochemical and refinery markets. And so when it comes to those contractors, these industrial and commercial contractors, like their safety record is exemplary. The work that they do is exceptional, which is why they thrive on repeat business. Well, you don't keep getting hired for 42 years if you're not doing great work. That's Action Industries. But also they know who they are. You know, there's some giant companies that do these mega projects, and they're not going to bid on a $200 million project. But if you have a 100-man job, that's their sweet spot. They're perfect for that. You need to get to know Action Industries. ActionINDINC.com.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana.
As we get on down the road, remind you about South Point Volkswagen, airline just north of Highland, and SouthPointVW.com. New and certified pre-owned in Baton Rouge and online at SouthPointVW.com, SouthPointVW.com. You know, one of the things that's really worth stressing when I tell you all the time about why I love driving a Volkswagen. Remember, at South Point Volkswagen, their vehicles are manufactured right here in the US of A. So you get the great German engineering, safety features, performance, all of it, without the cost and the benefit of supporting American jobs. But even more importantly right now, as people talk about tariffs and rising costs and all that stuff, these vehicles are manufactured in the US of A, so you don't even have to worry about the tariffs and all that conversation. So another benefit of shopping at South Point Volkswagen, Louisiana's largest volume Volkswagen dealer, and they're awesome people as well. Volkswagen, so much it's a culture, it's a vibe, it's fun to drive, and they're fun to deal with as well. Airline just north of Highland, South Point Volkswagen.
All right, welcome back in after further review here on a Tuesday presented by Sunshine. Musso in for Moscona. Obviously, we're just pushing off the dock from here and really diving heavy into the Tyrann Mathieu news. Of course, Saints safety Tyrann Mathieu hanging it up, calling it a career, retiring today officially after 12 NFL seasons. Spent the first segment kind of talking about Tyrann's career in general, time at LSU with the Saints, obviously the Super Bowl championship with the Chiefs and whatnot. We'll shift here a little bit to now what's next for the New Orleans Saints. Also, just a note, Ross Jackson is going to join the show now. We've added him at 5 o'clock. So if you have to leave, come back over at 5 here. Ross's take, a couple more hours, see what Ross has been able to gather and whatnot on the situation, where the Saints might go, and all of those things, and just kind of, what it means for the team and the immediacy, and, of course, his reaction. So be here for that. Obviously, straight up 5 o'clock, Ross Jackson will be here to weigh in on the Tyrann Mathieu news as well. Mickey Loomis today, I met with the media to kind of kick off training camp, and he talked about the character of Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah, I just think, he's one of those guys that just commands respect by his actions and his deeds. He's got great message. He's very thoughtful, intelligent, super smart player, about all the right things, and his experiences in life, and he's just fantastic.
That's one of the things that makes Tyrann so easy to root for, is how open and honest he's been about everything throughout his journey that we've all seen play out in the public eye. And I mean, and he's talked about how much that impacted his journey as well and led to some of the decisions. And but I mean, said it at the end of last segment, he's just, as much as you enjoyed tuning in to watch Tyrann Mathieu play football, I enjoyed rooting for him just even more, because he made it so easy. Would love to take plenty of your reaction as well. Get into the Bayou Ford YouTube chat. Give us your reaction on Tyrann Mathieu calling it a career, whether it's an LSU memory, whether it's New Orleans Saints, whatever it may be, a personal interaction you had with Tyrann. Again, Bayou Ford YouTube chat. You can tweet me as well at Musso Matthew, or X, whatever. We can get to that throughout plenty of the show. Right now, though, let's talk about what is next for the New Orleans Saints at safety, because while we can celebrate Tyrann Mathieu for the career that he had and him being able to move on, and that's all well-deserved, it does leave a hole for the New Orleans Saints right at the doorstep of training camp, and that is safety. It's not a spot where the Saints were particularly deep to begin with, but now you're even thinner, because that's a 12-year vet who had amassed 220 tackles for you in 3 seasons and was all over the field forcing turnovers as well. Like, that's a hole. Justin Reed, provided he stays healthy, is going to slide in, no problem, starting safety. He's got one of those spots. But what do you do next? And Mickey Loomis was asked. He was asked at his media availability here on Tuesday about what they do at safety. Will they go out and sign a guy? And Mickey Loomis, in no uncertain terms, said yes. I mean, he kind of did it in his own way, where he's like, yeah, we'll see what's out there. Okay, Mick, of course you will. You're totally going to go out there and sign a free agent safety, because the options that you have aren't maybe the best. You're looking, what's left now is a rookie in Jonas Sanker, who we'll come back to, Jordan Howden, JT Gray. For all intents and purposes, that's what you have left at safety. JT Gray has mainly been a special teams just ace for the New Orleans Saints. He's very good at his role there, and he's adored as well, I think, by Saints fans a bunch. He just has not seen a lot of snaps actually on defense for the New Orleans Saints. Jordan Howden, at times throughout his career, has been a very productive player for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, he really kind of burst onto the scene. It's okay, wait, is he kind of next? But you've seen that not necessarily totally play out. When I look at guys who are available, the first one that's going to jump off the page is Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons is a veteran in the NFL, but he's a guy that the New Orleans Saints already went after last offseason. His name was thrown about plenty a season ago when the Saints were looking for safety help. 9 years in the league, ultimately, he ends up with the Atlanta Falcons. It didn't necessarily go as expected there from a production standpoint wise, and he remains unsigned. But that's a guy that the Saints have already gone after once. They're definitely familiar with the player from their flirtations with him a season ago, but also playing against him twice, when he was with the Falcons. He is older. He's fixing to be 32 years old. So you wonder how much he has left in the tank. But again, this isn't a long-term fix for the New Orleans Saints. It would be a Band-Aid, and it's not even to say that he'd come in and immediately be a starter for the Saints. Jordan Whitehead is another one. Oh, I should say one more thing about Simmons. He has familiarity with Brandon Staley. They overlapped for a year when Staley was in Denver. Now, the caveat there is Staley was the outside linebackers coach, so he didn't have much dealings with Justin Simmons, but was in the same building as the guy, sees how he goes about his business, when he's on the team. All of that, I think, does matter. The familiarity with the player matters there. Jordan Whitehead has spent a bulk of his 7 years in the NFC South with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, man, was a very productive player for Tampa Bay in his time there. Had a little hiatus from the Bucs, went to the Jets. But that's a guy, Saints are obviously very familiar with him as a player because, again, as time with the Buccaneers. He's a little on the younger side, is Jordan Whitehead, 28 years old, inching towards 29, but still has a lot left there. That's one I would really look at. And to be honest with you, a guy like Whitehead, his previous estimated value was $4.5 million. He still remains unsigned at this point before training camp. You could probably even get that down a little bit. So you're looking at a guy under 30 who you could probably get for cheaper than maybe market value would have for him. That's an interesting one. And then there's a trio of guys with Saints ties who are all veterans. Marcus Williams, Von Bell, Marcus May. I know none of those names are really going to excite everybody, but why I look at that and go, okay, is because of another player that's already on the team. If you go out and you get a Von Bell or a Marcus May, they're both in their 30s, early 30s, but they're both in their 30s. But they have familiarity with the Saints organization having played here. Obviously, that was a different era of Saints football than where they are right now. But they're still familiar with the organization and how it likes to operate. Same goes for Marcus Williams. And as I said, I know when I mentioned those names, specifically Williams and Marcus May, a lot of Saints fans are going to cringe, and I totally understand that. I think if you look at those guys and that's the route you go, you're not bringing them in to be a starter. That's where you turn your focus to a guy like Jonas Sanker. And this is a massive opportunity now for Jonas Sanker to wedge and earn a starting opportunity with the New Orleans Saints. And that now really kind of, outside of the quarterback competition, really moves up into the top 5 of storylines for training camp here in 2025. Jonas Sanker, 3rd-round pick, top 100 guy out of Virginia. Was a 2-time first-team All-ACC player there. He's got the size you like, you kind of from a safety standpoint. And somebody the Saints really liked and felt fortunate to get, quite honestly, when they did in the 3rd round. The reviews for him out of OTAs and minicamp, albeit it was 7-on-7 basically, were very good. We had Ross Jackson on, a few weeks ago when I was filling in for Matt, and Ross had a piece up about how Jonas Sanker could get himself into a starting position as a rookie, and that was already with Tyrann Mathieu and Justin Reed on the team. Now with the pads coming on in training camp, you're really, really going to get a major look at Jonas Sanker. And I think, honestly, the best case scenario for the New Orleans Saints, because think about what they're trying to do. Mickey Loomis, when he met with the media on Tuesday, talked about a reset. He didn't want to call it a rebuild, but they are open to a reset now that Derek's not, playing anymore. That's opened themselves up. Okay, Mickey, your quarterback's gone. you're starting over at that position. That's pretty much a rebuild. But there were the other signs too, making all 9 draft picks, really trying to get younger. Some of the cap-saving moves that they made, they're trending toward that direction. For me, now that Tyrann Mathieu has retired, the best-case scenario, I think, for the New Orleans Saints is Jonas Sanker beats out Jordan Howden, JT Gray, earns that starting spot as a rookie, and you go sign somebody that has ties to the organization or a veteran safety that you don't need to really come in, that you can just come in and really be that depth piece. And that brings a whole nother, crop of safeties into the discussion for the New Orleans Saints. Because the sooner you can get a guy like Jonas Sanker on the field, the sooner he can get out there and show what he's got, the sooner you get even further down the road, further on the track of rebuilding. You get immediately younger. And if that's a player that you felt fortunate to have available for you at pick 93 in the 3rd round, getting him on the field as early as possible and letting him go through the growing pains to where maybe as a second-year player, he can take the jump and become one of the better safeties in the league. That's what you're hoping for, obviously. For me, that's the best-case scenario. That's what I'm rooting for. They're going to go sign somebody in free agency because you have to from a depth standpoint. You can't go into this with 3 safeties. But, man, give me the young guy. Let Jonas Sanker show what he's made of, win that job, learn from a veteran in Justin Reed as well, playing side by side from him, and be positioned to hopefully take a huge jump his second year, and you just go further down the road of getting younger. That's how the Saints are going to get back to where they hope they can get to. Jonas Sanker's the key for me. So whether it's a guy like Justin Simmons, whether it's like the 3 former Saints that are still available, hopefully you don't have to ask them to come in too much because Jonas Sanker has taken full advantage of this opportunity. He is right at the top of the list now of players to watch in Saints training camp after Tyrann Mathieu calls it a career after 12 years in the league. All right, we'll grab a break. Come back on the other side. We'll switch gears a little bit here. Some shots were fired at the SEC from Big Ten and ACC media days. We'll talk about those next here on AFR.
After further review.
Brought to you by Glow Resources. If you are a business owner, if you're an HR manager, a VP, an ops manager, if you're the person in charge of hiring at your job, at your place of business, and you're having trouble finding the right people, you need Glow Resources. And I want to remind you, Glow Resources, they're exceptional when it comes to skilled blue-collar workers and also white-collar divisions. Remember, Glow Resources has a full professional placement division. So we're talking about office administrators, executive-level assistants, assistant controllers, plant managers, scheduling assistants, basically any type of office job. Accounting, HR, marketing, managerial, supervisor roles. If you're having trouble finding those people and sometimes hard to fill roles, Glow Resources specialize. They recruit nationwide. For example, they had a Baton Rouge company that was looking for an engineer. They found the employee in Florida to work the job in California. It's Glow Resources. Check them out online today. glowresources.com.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana.
We're brought to you by Rouse's, Rouse's.com, Rouse's.com. They got Rouse's everywhere, y'all. Speaking of which, you need to save some money? Go to Rouse's. Get the weekly ad. Go to Rouse's.com. You can click on the weekly ad. You're going to shop for your groceries. You're on a budget. Rouse's is going to help you save. Or just go to Rouse's and look for the Rouse's branded products, because one of the most impressive things about Rouse's is whenever they have that Rouse's the R logo with the circle around it. If you see that Rouse's branded logo, so their products, they always do whatever they can to source locally. Whatever ingredients they can source locally in Louisiana, they do it for their products. And they're going to save you money. Great quality products to save you money and always a friendly atmosphere as well. It's Rouse's, the official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints, Rouse's.com. Rouse's, this feels like home.
All right. Big Ten and ACC Media Days both kicked off here on Tuesday. And as you might expect, because, of course, with everything going on in college football, as you might expect with everything going on in college football, the SEC was brought up at both. And, look, I never really stumped for the conference. It's just not my deal. I hope LSU wins every game they play. I don't really care what the rest of the league does. But I had time today. So I was like, okay, let's kind of do this a little bit. Let's start with Tony Petitti. Tony Petitti, and I have something on here later actually to talk about him as well with his comments on the college football playoff because my man is just staunchly against 5+11. And he makes some good points with some others, but we'll put the college football playoff discussion to the side, since then, until then. I'm not going to fault him too much for this because it was a very leading question. He was asked about the SEC handing out pamphlets to media at spring meetings and saying it's the best football conference. Like, you don't really get any more leading than that. Hey, what do you think of this? They say they're better than you. What do you really want him to say? And you know what? He really took a pretty high road approach. Quote, we just stand by what we do in the Big Ten. The national results have shown that over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, the Big Ten winning the 2 titles. So he snuck a little shot in there after. I mean, I get it. Sports are very, what have you done for me lately? Like, I understand that. Whether it's coaching or result, I mean, any of it. It's what have you done for me lately? But if you're going to count national titles, I wouldn't do that with the SEC quite yet. Are we going to forget about the run the conference was on before the last 2 years, where it was either Clemson or Ohio State, Florida State too, and then every other year was an SEC team, and a lot of different SEC teams. When you go back the last quarter century, maybe let's not do that quite yet. So that's all I really want to say on Tony Petitti. Rhett Lashlee, however, I found this hilarious. Did you see this? Rhett Lashlee went out of his way to take a shot at the SEC today. And it's just comical. Because comparing the Big Ten to the SEC is one thing. And there's merit there. Comparing the ACC to the SEC is just flat out laughable. And Rhett Lashlee was talking about it being any given week in the ACC. Man, you could face the last place team and they can come up and beat you. You really got to be ready. More on that momentarily, by the way. And that, they had 13 bowl teams and a handful of 9-win teams. You had 2. Three or four 10-win teams. You did, 3 10-win teams and an 11-win team. So that's great. It's any given week. And then this is where he goes out of his way. Says, everybody wants to talk about depth in the conference. The SEC, since 1964, it's been the same 6 teams that have won their championship. 6. That's it. No one different. Quote, that's top heavy to me, not depth. Here's the problem. That is laughable because it is just such a cherry-picked stat. And this is where I was like, you know what? Yeah, I got time today for this. Because in actuality, I really don't actually care. But depth of conferences is always bandied about. And it's always something like that. Just some cherry-picked stat. Let's go back to 1964 because it's the last season we can go back to where one of these 6 teams didn't win the SEC. Yeah, no wonder that might seem top-heavy. You picked the range where it's top-heavy. And you had to go all the way back to 1964. You want to know how easy that is to do and how lazy that is to do? Watch this. Since 2011, Clemson and Florida State have won the ACC championship every year but one. That's top-heavy to me, not depth. See how effortless and easy that was? When you want to cherry pick things, sure. But since you want to talk about any given Sunday, Rhett Lashlee, or any given Saturday, let's do that. It's the last place team. The last place team can beat anybody in the ACC. You remember who the last place team in the ACC was in 2024? That was Florida State. They went 1-7 in the league. You know who their one win was? Cal, who went 2-6. Boy, I'm sure those top teams in the ACC are really shaking in their boots having to play a Florida State team that was replacing an undefeated roster who should have been in the college football playoff, their quarterback, all of that, and just had so many question marks. How about the Cal Bears? They went 2-6. They upset anybody worth it in the ACC this year? No, they didn't. They didn't. Cal's. Here, I'm gonna pull this up just so I make sure I have it correct. Cal's 2 wins in the ACC a season ago. They're 2 wins. That's all they had at the bottom of the league. Their 2 were Wake Forest and Stanford. Stanford, by the way, who finished 2-6. When you actually want to talk about depth and you talk about any given Saturday, how about Oklahoma, who finished 2-6, just like Cal, dominating Alabama, who's been the standard bearer of the country for how many years when they were a 3-touchdown underdog? That's depth of a league. How about Vanderbilt, who's just the perennial cellar dweller, not just of the SEC, of college football, hanging 40 on Alabama? Or Vanderbilt beating Virginia Tech from the ACC. How about the number of draft picks from each league? That's not even close. That's a good way to show depth. Recruiting rankings, the talent you've brought in, the talent you've developed and put into the league. You know, the 80 plus some odd draft picks from the SEC every year. Those don't all come from LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Texas. Like, they don't all come from those schools, or the 6 that have won it since 1964. It's just laughable because when you take such a cherry-picked stat like that and try to make a case, when there's so many other accurate ways you could determine the depth of a league. Here's another one for you. How about bowls? I get it. Bowls don't mean much anymore, but we're playing on the same timeline here as Rhett Lashlee, his 1964 timeline. Mississippi State. No one's ever going to, consider them powerhouse in the SEC, right? No, they're a team that finishes at the bottom of the league regularly. Well, since 1964, Mississippi State has been to 23 bowl games, and they're 13-10 in those. So that's them facing other opponents. The SEC had a winning record in their Power 4 non-conference games this year. Each team played one. You got a winning record there by 3 or more games. As a matter of fact, you're above 500. That's a pretty good judge of depth in a league. And here's why the champion aspect of it's stupid and not an accurate way of measuring depth of a league. Let's go back to Mississippi State. In 2014, Mississippi State was the number 1 team in the country for the majority of the season. They did not play for an SEC championship. The only way that happens is depth in a league. Any given Saturday in the ACC, SMU turned the ball over 6 times against Duke and won that game because Duke's an okay football team. You see 2, 3 turnovers make a difference in the SEC. Whereas SMU went and beat Duke, turning it over 6 times. Okay. Chill out, Rhett Lashlee. See what happens when you cherry pick things? It's real easy to poke a hole in your argument just looking at a season ago when you wanted to tout the depth of the league. by the way, the SEC had, he mentioned, the teams with the 8 wins, the 9 wins, the 10 wins, all of that. The SEC had 8 different teams. Half the league win 9 or more games. Get out of here. Jeez, dude. What are you talking about, Rhett Lashlee? Okay. Now, I will go back to being, don't care about the rest of the conference. LSU, go beat everybody, and I want nothing good for anyone else there. Because ultimately, I'm not. It's just funny how everyone's there. And that's how you know. Like that, you want to, the true sign of greatness is by how much you're hated. And everybody's always got the SEC's name in their mouth an awful lot. That's the true measure of greatness. You can always tell how great you are by how much you're booed away from home, right? Or the SEC's booed an awful lot. And everybody's ready to just take their shot whenever they can. That shows you just how great the Southeastern Conference really is. All right, we're going to grab a break. I actually didn't even intend to go that long on that. We're going to grab a break, come back on the other side, close out hour number 1 here on AFR. Maybe get to some of your reaction on the Tyrann Mathieu news. That's next. Stick around.
AFR.
Always a pleasure to tell you about our friends at the Williamson Eye Center. Check them out online at williamsoneye.com. They've got locations all over the greater Baton Rouge area. On the Baton Rouge General Campus, you turn off a Bluebonnet onto Picardy, you make that right. And then right there at the stop sign, the building on the right, the first 2 floors, that's the Williamson Eye Center. State-of-the-art dry eye center, and it's full service. Of course, they have their state-of-the-art surgery center there where you can have your LASIK or whatever surgical procedure you're having. But they have your standard annual eye exam as well at the Williamson Eye Center. Learn more at williamsoneye.com. The thing I tell you every day is take the advice that I was given and change your life. To give yourself the gift of sight is absolutely incredible. If you're someone like me who spent your life with contacts or glasses, there is a way to be done with it forever. williamsoneye.com. Go see Dr. Blake Williamson for that free consultation. 924-2020. 924-2020 or williamsoneye.com for the Williamson Eye Center.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana.
If you are thinking about selling your home, maybe you've been on the fence, you've looked at rates and everything, like if you do sell, can you afford to buy the next home? Listen, the market right now is en fuego. I was talking to Darren James over the weekend, and he was like, Matt, the start of 2025 is the best start we've ever had. I'm telling you, consumer confidence is back. It is time right now to check out Darren James. Agent225.com, agent225.com. Yes, in Baton Rouge, but all over. Like, I just opened this one up. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo in Slidell that Darren's selling right on the water there on Harbor Drive. You can check it out, 129. You can check it out right now at agent225.com, agent225.com. Listen, buying, selling, commercial, residential, you need a realtor, you need the best. You need Darren James. 335-7666 or agent225.com.
Think real estate, think Darren James.
All right, wrapping up hour number 1 here of AFR. Man, it's been a busy show, obviously, with the Tyrann Mathieu news. Jason Loop on Twitter sends in, says, Musso, on the bright side, now Tyrann Mathieu can come coach DBs at LSU with Corey Raymond. Says, imagine being a high school DB and those two show up to recruit you. That's something I'm going to be very interested to see for Tyrann Mathieu. I think if he was ever offered the opportunity to coach at LSU in any capacity, I think he would love to do that. I mean, Tyrann has made no bones about his love for LSU. Again, as we said earlier in the show, I mean, he's given back to the program. He's donated the Players Lounge and things of that nature already. I think what's going to be interesting is to see if that's the route that Tyrann wants to go. If that's something he actually pursues, not just at LSU, but in general coaching. I think that's a guy who could bring immense value to a staff. I mean, he just has those certain things that you can't teach in terms of leadership as well. So, I mean, I think that is absolutely a guy, and I do think if LSU offered him a job in some capacity, he would absolutely jump at it to take it. It's just, is that going to be the route LSU wants to go? And also Tyrann. I mean, this is a guy who can now kind of go be a father for a little bit now and not have to, focus so much on football. So, I mean, that's the question that you have to first answer. But, man, yeah, that would absolutely be exciting for sure, seeing Tyrann Mathieu on staff potentially at LSU now in the future, now that his NFL career is done. So, y'all keep some of the reaction coming in here. We got to grab a break, close out the hour here. We'll come back on the other side. Sports Center to get you caught up on the national headlines, and then we'll talk some LSU football. There's a piece at ESPN.com today. LSU can win the national championship if. I have some thoughts on the ifs for LSU. I don't agree with most of them. That's next here on AFR.
AFR.
Brought to you by Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. When we talk about Relief Windows every day, I always say windows, doors, siding. And now shutters as well. They do your indoor shutters. Same thing as the windows. Custom made, measured to fit your windows, custom fit for your windows, lifetime warranty on your windows, your shutters. But Brandon, you often hear say their number one product is customer satisfaction. And that's not just a catchy line. That's not a cliche phrase. Have an experience with Relief Windows and you'll understand. They go to the ends of the earth to make sure their customers are thrilled with the work they do. As a matter of fact, Relief Windows never takes $1 from you. You will not, no deposit, no down payment. They take all the risk. They will not take $1 until you're thrilled with the work they do. Who else does that? Only Relief Windows. Check them out online at ReliefWindows.com.